No, you started.
I have. Right. If anybody's watching so far, we are live, and we're going to start off by just doing a sort of general round of introductions, and we'll start the program proper at dead on 7 to abide by previous advertising. But in order to make some introductions, this is a Class Consciousness Project live stream. And in order to bring things up to the minute, we're going to be focusing on the Rochdale by-election and related issues. But it'd be good in order that viewers can get to know us if we went around and did some introductions. So I'll throw first to Rick in Liverpool. What's your name and where you come from?
Oh, what was his name? What did Cilla Black used to shout to? What was his name? Here's our
Wally.
Here's our something with a quick reminder. Well, anyway, I am Rick in Liverpool, the Class Consciousness Project, former trade unionist and party member. Yeah, socialist, communist, whatever you want to say.
And Jason?
Yeah, hi, I'm Jason, also from the Class Consciousness Project. I have been a Labour Party member, a Left Unity member, a Workers' Party of Britain member. I've also been a trade unionist for over 30 years. Managed to ascend to national officer level in my former trade union, the Transport Salary Staff Association. And looking forward to talking about the Rochdale by-election, because there's a few things to discuss.
Oh, yes, fun. Will Johnson, first comment on the stream, says, here's our Jerry with a quick reminder. I think that's a Cilla Black reference.
Yeah.
Ah, there you go.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Here's me.
And over to Terry.
Hi, my name's Terry, also of the Class Consciousness Party. Similar background to Jason, probably over a longer period of time, but not reached the high accolades and places that he did. But yeah, ex-Labour Party, joined under the Corbyn debacle, rejoined, I should say. Then the Workers' Party found that to be a failed path to follow. And so here I am with these other comrades.
Thanks, Terry. And we are joined by Comrade Chris, who's with us now. Chris, we're just doing a round of introductions. Do you want to say who you are and where you're coming from?
Hi, I'm Chris Dawes from the formerly of the Workers' Party.
I think Mr. Hawes is having a few technical
giving out again.
Okay, I think there's a little bit of an issue on
coming through okay.
Can hear you now, mate. Can hear you now, mate. Do you want to go ahead?
I don't think we've got Chris here with us, lads.
No, it doesn't look that way.
No. I'll have to
you hear me?
Let's see if you can.
Just.
No, it's not working very well, mate, at the moment.
Shall we move on?
Well,
I'd suggest we move on, I think. Chris will get back in.
Chris will get back in. So we're coming to you tonight, as the previous speakers indicated, talking about the Rochdale by-election, because there's a number of things that need to be said and talked about when it comes to that. And of course, the Rochdale by-election takes place next week on the 29th of February. There's been various debacles that have taken place for Labour Party and Greens. There's now Bucky's favourite, George Galloway, and of course, we all used to be members of Mr. Galloway's particular organisation, being the Workers' Party of Britain. Again, he is now down to odds on to win the seat. So there's a fair bit to be said about this, and also the various scandals involving the Labour Party, the way they've handled things, the way the Greens have handled things, and then we got broader issues that affect the working class, not just in Rochdale but in the wider country to talk about. So throw it first to Rick. What's your initial take on the chaos in Rochdale, just up the road from me?
Yeah, cheers, mate. Do you know, I've only slightly glanced at it as we've been coming up to it, but because we're doing this live, I thought I'd dig deeper into it. And what a cesspool of awful political campaigning. It's very strange, essentially, for a Greater Manchester former industrial town to have its whole election based around Palestine, from Rafa to Rochdale, as you can say. But there's been some truly ridiculous things before it's even started, especially around the Labour Party with Alza Ali, with his strange comments about the 7th. And then they sent Lisa Nandy down, didn't they? Brought her back, and now they don't support him, but he's still running on a Labour ticket. So it's a very ridiculous situation. And then you've got, I was looking through, you've got, we've also got a reverend who's running on climate change issues. You've got a local independent, or 4 independents running there. You've got a fella called 2 Howarths, I don't think they're related. William Howarth, who's essentially running on a campaign of getting the paedophile rings that are apparently still prominent in the area. And then you've got probably the sanest of them all, the Monster Raven Looney Party, haven't you? Raven Rodents. But there's also a local businessman, Dave Tully. I've looked at him and he seems like a genuine fella. I wouldn't say he's probably of our politics, but he's running as a proper local man. But with all this circus around it, it's basically perfect for Galloway to come running in, isn't it? It's the perfect pantomime for Galloway to come in and do his great speeches, his orating. And if it's down to Palestine issues, then who's better than Galloway to speak about this? Local issues, well, I'll see where the locals going to get annoyed just seeing people riding in just to get a ticket for the MP seat. But it just comes down to what are the issues that you're voting on? Do you vote? Is Rochdale really going to vote on Palestine, or is he going to vote on his local issues?
Interesting question. Throw it down south to Jason.
Yeah, it's a very interesting by-election. Certainly more interesting than the last couple we had, one in Wellingborough just a week or 2 ago. It is apparently turning into a one-issue election. It's revolving around the slaughter that's been inflicted on the Palestinians, and it's not a surprise that someone like George Galloway has identified an issue. He's gone to a constituency with a sizable Muslim population, and he's talking to the Muslim community about the death and destruction that's being meted out on the populations of Palestine, and it's finding resonance with the people living there. The Labour candidate, Azhar Ali, as Rick alluded to, had his support officially withdrawn by the Labour Party, leaving him standing as a sort of independent/Labour candidate, but without official Labour backing. What on its face seems a fairly innocuous statement about October the 7th and the events there that took place then. Certainly not something that other people haven't said, that there may have been Israeli complicity in the events of October the 7th. But for that, he had his support withdrawn, and it's left us with a race that arguably is between 2 candidates now, George Galloway and Simon Danchuk, who's standing for reform, a former MP for Rochdale as well, before some unfortunate events involving a few pictures of a 17-year-old. But yeah, very interesting battle. There does seem to be some resonance between what happened in Batley and Spen, and also George's previous encounters in Bradford West and Bethnal Green and Bow before that, where he's tapped into a sizable Muslim community and used a contemporary issue to leverage support. He did it in 2005 with Una King in Bethnal Green and Bow using the illegal invasion of Iraq. Bradford West was slightly different. I think he capitalised on internal strife within the local Labour Party, but nonetheless, he's very, very astute at picking up on issues which he can use as leverage, and he's doing it now in Rochdale as well.
Mm.
All right, thanks, Jason. Bro, to Terry now. What's your take on this?
Well, I can't really add to anything that Rick and Jason have said, but apart from the one thing is that he's very adept at going into these areas. I saw it in Batley and Spen, and he does appeal to Pakistani population, and they are interested in Gaza, as we all are. But he's good at that, and he does speak well on Palestine. The only thing I'd say on the whole issue, is it's just very opportunistic, but that's what the Workers' Party are, or that's what they've become. I can't really add to that. I won't repeat what Rick and Jason have just said.
All right, thanks, Terry. Chris, can you hear me?
Repeat what Rick and
I think we've got a technical problem with Chris's feed again.
Seems that way.
Okay. Well, we'll move to beyond our opening statements then to further discussion, which is the whole question that comrades have brought up there about this by-election, and of course Galloway has picked his battle well here, because the Labour Party have, as Jason has indicated, collapsed into chaos with denouncing their own candidate, even though he's still on the ballot paper. He's now embraced Corbyn, though by all accounts his previous political history was like a fairly typical Northwest Labour councillor, and I know Rochdale Council fairly well, given that it's in the broad locality in terms of it being a Greater Manchester area. It's always had a reputation as being very right-wing, even for Labour Party, and very much distrusted and despised by the local population. So, like, and this guy comes from the north, the Labour Party in the area. He comes out of a background of being on the right wing of that. So now he's flipped over, and he's like trying to sort of portray himself as some great bold independent. But what he's a reflection of is the fact that if you're in a predominantly Muslim constituency and you're a Labour councillor or MP, you can't be pro-Israel because you will not politically survive. So if they're trying to find somebody who's not said anything about Israel that's negative, they're going to have a very long, bloody hard job, because to get in through what are like active community networks in these areas, you need to be on board with the basic on the basic level with like freedom for the Palestinians. And so if Starmer's going to try and find a whole load of candidates who've never said anything negative about Israel, then he's on a hide into nothing. But it does open the door up for Galloway, of whose party we all used to belong. So let's talk about him a little bit then. There's an argument that's put forward by many, including those who aren't in his party, that him winning this will be significant in terms of the pressure it'll put on Starmer especially, and like it'll be a big blow for the in favor of the Palestinian solidarity movement. So there is an argument being made for Galloway. Now I'd ask comrades, what do they think of that? Is it valid? What do we reckon?
What damage can he do as a single man coming into a bourgeois system? What damage can he do to Starmer's reputation that Starmer doesn't do already? I don't think Palestine essentially can be tied down to just a left-wing issue as well, because there are resistant parts of the Palestinian. There are parts of the Palestinian resistance that aren't left-wing, so the people can be on the right, especially Muslims can be on the right and support this issue, even though it's not essentially just a Muslim issue. But I do not see any benefit of electioneering within this system. I don't believe that if he was pushing Parliament for change for socialism, then it's going the wrong way, especially with some of the statements that we've seen previous to what they want when they go into Parliament. But going back to the Palestine issue, it could raise awareness, but what's he going to say that others haven't said? I think the awareness is there. I think it's making a change is more difficult.
All right, Jason, anything from you on this?
Yeah, I must admit I'm slightly conflicted on this question, because obviously anyone that can use parliamentary means to raise the issue of the slaughter that's ongoing in Palestine should be supported and should be applauded. My conflict comes from the fact that, to use one of Galloway's own terms, often it goes up like a firework and comes down like a burnt stick. Galloway was elected in 2005 in Bethnal Green and Bow. Strangely decided not to stand again in 2010. He stood in the neighbouring constituency of Poplar and Limehouse, which is the other seat in the borough of Tower Hamlets in London, and lost. He was only an MP for Bradford West for about 3 years before he was hoiked out in 2015. And then, of course, in Batley, he only came third. So I think we have to support Galloway in as much as he's bringing popular attention to the plight of the Palestinians. But we have to understand that there are real limitations to what he can do. He may well do some, if he wins, and I suspect he will, he may well do some very eloquent and passionate speeches in the Houses of Parliament, but they're likely to be in front of 20 people. I've seen so many speeches he's done where the benches were nigh on empty. And I think on the one hand, we should support him with whatever caveats we have, being as we're all ex-Workers' Party members, but also understand that there are a lot of limitations to what Galloway can actually achieve.
All right, thanks, Jason. Chris, can you hear us now, mate?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we're all good. We're just going around giving our take on the Rochdale by-election and like the argument that's being made for Galloway. So did you want to say anything about that?
I didn't hear what you all said apart from Jason just then. But I do think it's quite cynical that Galloway is, while he's been with the Workers' Party, he's targeted areas with a lot of Muslims who are bound to vote for him as a person because of his friendship with the Muslim communities. And even though he might get a voice in Parliament to talk about Palestine, is he going to get a voice in Parliament to talk about the general working class condition? I'm not so sure.
Yeah, fair question, Chris. Terry, did you want to say anything on that?
1 point. Jason said, he'll get people, he'll be able to make good speeches in Parliament. But I'm very cynical. I'm convinced that the Labour Party will be told you won't be attending when he's speaking. It'll just be an empty chamber. We'll hear the speeches. When we've heard them all before, and they're very good speeches, and he is a good speaker. You can't take that away from him. And yes, he should be speaking on behalf of the Palestinians, so that's a good thing. I like to think it's a small blow in a kick up the backside for the Labour Party to show people that they are so out of touch in the way that they run things, to take away support from a candidate, and it looks to me like they were terrified of getting beaten by Galloway. In Batley and Spen, they brought in the sister of a dead MP to win the election, didn't they? And these sort of things, the Labour Party are just, you expect it from the Tories. I do expect it from the Labour Party now. I do hope Galloway wins, in fairness, but not for the reasons that the general population might think.
Yeah, well, it raises the issue of like the how effective like the parliamentary road truly is, because it's one of the things that people think is going to be a positive about Galloway is that he's, by getting into Parliament, he's going to get on the media more. He'll be on BBC, like having a go at like Labour Party politicians. I would say, well, don't hold your breath on that. The BBC now is more likely to keep Galloway off than it was 10 years ago. Like it's more tightly controlled by the government now. The messaging is more scripted by the state than it ever has been before. So it's an open question as to whether they'd even let him on Question Time these days. I mean, I haven't watched Question Time in years because I find that if I do, my brain tries to leap out of my nose. But the point about like people seem to think, and I think this is a bit of a problem with people on the left, that if we just get enough media presence, then somehow everybody's minds are going to change about something, that some sort of critical mass will be created by having Galloway on enough, or having, some left-wing Labour MP make a speech or two. And I don't blame people for that, because that's just how we're raised. We're raised to look at like media and parliamentarism as the answer. We're not raised to look at it in the way that we're, as a project, trying to get it across to people, which is, no, that's all enemy territory. That's all the territory of the ruling class. They decide really largely who gets into Parliament via filtering systems. It's rare that there's an upset. If there is one this time, it's because of a unique combination of public anger and the establishment parties being basically screwing it up for themselves. So, but then you look at the media and people think, well, if we can just get in the media more, then more minds will be changed. But again, that's a game that's already rigged. I don't need to go into the exhaustive media critique now, but like, so what? So if you get 5 minutes on GB News where they're yelling at you and you're yelling back at them, and you get to call that plastic-looking guy who seems to be like a Ken doll, Tom Harwood, a bit of a dickhead. But that, again, like, that'll go on a clip reel on YouTube, and the same few thousand people will watch it. So I think we need to get out of this mentality that just getting an MP in and getting some more media time is going to advance the cause. Because I remember 20 years ago in the anti-war movement, people from the anti-war movement, the Stop the War Coalition, were on TV quite a lot. Didn't make any difference in the end, because what it did was it made people think that, oh, well, we're getting all this coverage, we're getting all this people out in the street, we've got MPs speaking out, and then the state went like that, give you the middle finger, and nobody knew what to do, because nobody had been prepared for the idea that the struggle had to go beyond these very acceptable parameters, which are carefully maintained by the state, the media, the Labour Party, and the trade union leaders. They all make sure that you're kept within this very acceptable ring of options, whereas in actual fact we need to break out of that. So I don't blame people who think that, well, I'll vote for Galloway as a fuck you to everybody else. Yeah, that's fine. But you need to be aware that even if you got the most revolutionary communist in the world into Parliament, the system itself is the problem.
Yeah, absolutely.
Anybody want to come back on anything?
I was going to say that's what. Oh. No, go ahead, Jason. Sorry.
Okay, yeah. It's something that's incredibly prevalent in the left. I think you alluded to it yourself, Alex, just then. Is that there's this belief within, I'll call it the left, because I can't think of a better term to describe the kind of people we're talking about here. But there's this problem where there's a belief held amongst the left that Parliament, democracy in this country, the whole system is a neutral one that's been hijacked by bad actors and gets distorted and contorted and perverted by bad people. The system belongs to the ruling class. This is their playpen that we're in. This is their game. They set the rules. So, like you said, if they don't want someone who says things that the ruling class find uncomfortable to listen to, they'll just make sure they don't go on the television or they don't go on the radio. And they'll leave them to use, smaller independent outlets that people will have to find rather than have fall into their lap, so to speak, to get their message across. And I say repeatedly, you can't vote your way to socialism. Socialism is a antithesis to the system that we're in. It destroys everything that the ruling class have built. So they won't let us vote their way to it because it's their system. And as long as leftists believe that it's just a neutral system that can be molded to what we need it to do, then we're going to go absolutely nowhere. And we're banging our head against a brick wall, trying to persuade people, no, this is not how the system works. The system doesn't belong to you. It belongs to them. It's theirs. They built, own it, and they run it.
Yeah, exactly right. Chris, you had a point.
I was just going to say, well, I'm probably just echoing what's been said already, that parliamentary democracy can't work for those reasons. Even if you have an MP who is a socialist and who fights for his constituents, he is just, or she is just one voice in a parliament of what, 650 people. But again, to contradict my own point, having that voice heard is one more way to get other people to think. But acting through that system will not work in the ways that Jason has just described. Even if you want to do something for your constituency as an MP, because an MP is more than just a representative of a party. They're also like a conduit from their constituents to the ruling system.
Yeah.
But they'll get outvoted, they'll get undermined, and that's another reason why it doesn't work. It can look good sometimes, but it never works.
Yeah. Anybody want to come in?
Yeah. Galloway is a great orator. There's no doubt about that. So anytime he gets to speak and given half a chance, a lot of people will listen to him. I know he's Marmite to a lot of people, but people will listen to him. I don't believe getting on the mainstream media makes a single bit of difference anymore. A lot of people don't trust it. A lot of people don't even care to watch it. A lot of people don't even watch the same style of television anymore, do they? A lot of people watch the streaming services, which ignores that. So they go on the YouTube, they go... I think people's news is coming from other outlets. So if we are to use that in our favour, as you say, it's not the be all and end all, use that in our favour. I think the alternative news is actually becoming better. But getting him into Parliament, he'd stand there in front of an empty room, and the speech will be for the camera that's pointed at him, and it will just be essentially a working of continuous ferocity just to push his opinion away and remove it from there. I don't think it'll ever work. And even look at the campaigning. Look at the campaigning for this kind of thing. You've got what's happened with Alzar Ali. That's all just completely ridiculous. And then you've got different... It's almost like they're showboating to find themselves a job in some kind of film. They're standing there, they're waving their hands and all that. And then when you look at the likes of the DPRK, they basically put your CV on the wall and they say, right, here's the people you can vote for. So who's the best one for the job? Not the person that speaks the best, not the person that has insulted the other person, so he's gone away. Do you know what I mean? You've got one of the candidates there. I think you brought him up, Jason. I can't pronounce his surname. The Reform fella, Simon. He's had all that Simon Danchuk. I saw it's a hilarious story that he bought the nail clippings of a dominatrix for a tenner all over the media. What's all this got to do with how we run the country? Just go back to bed, and then can we start with the real politics, please?
Yeah. Sorry, can I just butt in? Just on a technical issue, Luca in the live chat is saying, is it just me or is the audio breaking up? Anyone who's watching, if they're experiencing some problems with the audio, could they indicate in the live chat, please? Because we might be having some technical problems.
See, everyone's coming through clear on this end.
Yeah.
Don't know if it's an issue at the other end, but we'll continue, and if there's more problems, we'll see what we can do. But the other point is that, like, if you are actually getting in as either a councillor or an MP, who from a working class area, who's actually serious about wanting to represent the working class. And even if your point of view is, I'm going to get 2 things done, you know, I'm going to get the roads, so we say, the potholes in my local area, I'm going to get them filled in. If you're a councillor, say, well, the amount of time that you will have to devote just to getting the potholes filled in on one road is going to be, you're in for months and months of work and aggro and battles with the permanent bureaucracy in the council, the various different services to which contract work, public works are contracted out to, and it'll take you like 6 months to a year just to get one small thing done through this system. And that's assuming then that you can bring some extra pressure on it via organizing your community to go out and actually demonstrate and make a noise. So what you end up doing, and I don't knock people who do this because I've known people who've gone down this route, is you end up putting a huge amount of time and effort in to essentially move the ball 1 centimeter off the halfway line, essentially, to use the football in an analogy. And then you have to ask the question, well, is that an awful lot of energy that is actually well spent, or are there other things we should be doing with this? Because I've heard of incremental change, but there's a point where incrementalism just becomes a full stop, basically.
Look at the amount of people that actually go to elections as well. Look at the amount of people that vote. How many people are actually interested? You know, the apathy towards the parliamentary system. People know that this it makes no difference. You can vote anybody in, but it does exactly the same. The system is rigged in their favour. So you need to get out to people. You need to make people understand the problems and how we can change it. Not tell them to go tick a box.
Yeah, absolutely.
I agree. Because when I stood for the local council elections, I did have on the little manifesto to fix potholes and flags on the side and make sure the dog shit got cleaned up. And I still didn't get in. Everyone just voted for Labour. Who probably never even read their manifestos. And even if I did get in, the amount of obstacles, like you just said, Alex, that would have been in my way just to get one street fixed. The whole system is wrong. The system of councils having to hire subcontractors who run for profit and work all over the country, quite a lot of them, or all over the region, just to make money from councils hiring them to do part of a little job for the people who voted the councillors in. That's how our parliamentary democracy works. And that's extremely inefficient, and it is not in the benefits of the people who live and vote and work in this country.
Yeah, I'm reminded when you talk about the real, I wouldn't say low level, but the real like bread and butter issues that people are affected by at a council level, things like potholes in the roads and dog dirt on the street. I'm reminded of a comrade of mine who was active in Sinn Féin in Belfast. And they used to do it the other way around. They didn't promise that they'd get things fixed if they got elected. They got things fixed and that got them elected. So they would go knocking on people's doors. And people would say to people who they knocked on the door of, well, what's your issues? Oh, the street lights are all busted. So they'd make a few phone calls and they knew someone who could come and fix them. And they'd fix, and then they said, well, there's a break pothole at the end of the road. And they'd make a few phone calls and all of a sudden a load of tarmac's been put down. And it used to work a treat, apparently, because obviously all they had to do was say to the Sinn Féin guy or woman, this is the problem. And within a few days, it had been fixed. That's how you do it. If you're going to engage with this system, that's the way to do it. Fix the problem first, and then that will get you elected. Don't do it the other way around, because if you go through all these committees trying to get things fixed, nothing gets done.
Actually do something. Don't just talk about it. Just get out there and do
Yeah.
something. Don't promise it and then think, oh, Jesus, I can't do it because I've got all this red tape. I've got to sign this. I've got to do that.
Do it yourself.
Yeah, just get on it.
Yeah,
Just
but by the same token, though, that is, I do agree with you. That's popular activism.
Yeah.
But if you go out and do that, you'd also get the other side of the arguments. People going, "Why are you picking up all this litter? It's the council's job." Or you go, "I've just tarmacked the road, and the council is saying it's illegal." You can. I don't know if it's different in the northern part of Ireland, but that could happen in England, definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Or if you even if you say if you put up a bin, they could say that's an illegal bin. You've got to get rid of it.
Oh yeah, and they would do that. I mean, the people who run the councils, and of course the people who run the country, if you get in anywhere and you're not on the trusted man list for the you're not part of the Labour Party, you're not part of the Tories, they'll make your life miserable and try and undermine you in every way they possibly can until you quit. And so, I mean, what the point from what Jason said there is, like, Sinn Féin in Belfast and Derry and other places, they had established a pre-existing community network that was very, very strong. So they weren't coming at this in the method of like that many on the left here look at it, which is, I'm going to go and like issue my commitments to this community, put a few leaflets through a door, and then see what happens. It was like, no, they are part of that community. They live there, they work there, they know everybody, and they build from that basis. Like, I've been involved in council campaigns and parliamentary campaigns where we turned up and we stuck a leaflet through some doors, knocked on some doors, said, "Hey, vote for socialism," and we got the predictable like 120 to 200 votes each time. That was it, because that's all you're going to get from just doing that sort of minimum effort campaigning, which is all that the most of the left do. Now, Galloway overcomes that because he's got this massive name recognition, and he's attached himself to, well, particularly to the Palestine issue, and that's, playing in his favor at the moment. But again, to draw on what both Chris and Jason have said, like, even if he wanted to actually get stuff done for the people of Rochdale, won't be able to. Rochdale Council still controlled, I believe, by the Labour Party. There's very little way to get private members' bill through Parliament into law. And also let's address a negative about Galloway here, which is that he's done this twice before. Where's the long-lasting organisation in Bethnal Green and Bow? Where's the long-lasting organisational legacy of his stand in Bradford? There isn't any. Because then this is a flaw in the politics of George Galloway, and we've said some positive things about him. So I'll say some negative things about him, which is that he in respect, and I think it will be true in the WPB as well. It's part of the reason I left, is that for him it's all about being in Parliament, making the speeches, getting them on YouTube, getting more people to watch his talk show. Okay, and then what? Are you going to build a serious organisation amongst the working class of Rochdale? I don't think he is. I think he's going to issue a load of YouTube clips, and then he's going to try and stand again at the next election, which is only going to be a few months away. And he'll probably lose, because what will happen is that Labour will get its act together. They'll pick somebody else, and they'll throw a load of money at it. And the message will be, get the Tories out. And that will not just be from Labour. That will be from most of the media, including like the BBC. And so what's been achieved there? I mean, if people who are watching this from the WPB have a counterpoint and want to say that they're building an organisation in Rochdale, I'm happy to hear if they are. But I know the organisation fairly well, and I know Galloway, and I don't think either of those things are going to happen.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. And I'd just like to add to what Jason was saying about the Sinn Féin local elections. It is a very strong community there. And that's what we need to build in our communities through class consciousness. So people realise that they are part of a community and they do have an enemy.
Oh, God.
As soon as he said enemy, Chris was removed. Oh, Chris, you're back.
MI6.
We lost you there for a second, mate. We thought Steve Rotherham had got you.
Our enemy is the British state.
Yeah.
Yes. In all of its manifestations.
Absolutely.
I just
Now,
so the point you made there, Alex, was that without Galloway, then it's just a bunch of left-wing people coming to knock on people's doors, put leaflets through, and say vote for socialism. So there's without Galloway, there's two things that you're trying to do. Firstly, you're trying to convince people who have already decided they don't want to vote. And not only that, you're trying to convince them that socialism is the right thing. Do you know what I mean? But when you're taking a big name and they're voting for that person, for the cult of personality, you're not selling the socialism side of this. You're selling Galloway, aren't you? Selling Galloway into Parliament. So that's why there's nothing that's being created.
Mm. Well, the message that Galloway's sending out appears to be subtly different in Rochdale in 2024 to Batley and Spen in 2021. In 2021, he was knocking on doors saying that he represented what Labour Party used to be. And his shtick this time round is to basically give Sir Keir Starmer a bloody nose. The candidate who's actually selling themselves as the old Labour candidate is Simon Danchuk, which is an interesting approach. And it's like you said, it's the same issue over and over again. You know, I remember I had personal experience of it when I stood as a councillor for Tusk in 2014. It's very hard work when there's just you trying to leaflet, literally hundreds and hundreds of flats and houses across a very densely populated area to get, like Alex said, if you're lucky, 100 votes. And it's very demoralising as well. And you realise what you're up against, in whatever you might say about the Labour Party and the Tories. They've got supporters, they've got activists, they've got boots on the ground that socialist parties like the Workers' Party and Tusk, which is a coalition rather than a party, but they simply don't have. So it's extremely difficult.
Now the moving it out to broader issues, comrades. I know that you've all been excited, particularly Jason and Terry will be excited by this, that the TUC's launched its Heart Unions campaign, and it's been backed by many Labour MPs. So I, for one, feel relieved that many Labour MPs want to pose with a NAF sign. Terry, are you now feeling confident in the Labour Party because some of them have appeared in public with this campaign?
Yeah, I'm ecstatic. I think it's brilliant for that Angela Eagle can stand there with the politician, a northern politician, and say, Heart Week, it's lovely. You've got ones down south. They're all overdoing it. Rachel Reeves was doing it the other week. And I question them because I say, when you get elected, will you repeal all the trade union laws, all the anti-trade union laws, right from the first ones, not the most recent ones, right from the back? And they won't. So what's this Heart Unions? And these union leaders should be saying to these politicians, you put your arm around me. You want to be getting in there, repealing these laws that are affecting our members. And when they don't do that, then the members should be turning around to the leaders of the unions and saying, you ain't getting our money, we're going to look somewhere else. I reckon the post office could be on the verge of a breakaway, from what I hear from different people. I'm not sure whether they'd have enough, but they could get a few. They could get a good few to start it off. So, as I say, I'm ecstatic that they're doing it. I just think it's marvellous. I'm sure Jason feels the same.
Well, I think we should definitely come back to the post office question, Terry, because that's a big dispute that got sold out in a contemptible fashion, as we covered earlier last year. But Jason, to draw on what Terry was saying, do the union leaders actually want to do away with all the anti-trade union laws?
The short answer is no. I don't think they do. I think, but bearing in mind, let me get this right. I believe it was the Trade Union and Labour Relations Act consolidated in 1992. So we're talking about a 32-year piece of legislation. And it was a bit of a watershed moment in the trade union movement because it did things like enforced workplace, banned workplace ballots, made ballots postal, and they're postal to this day. So you can't ballot for strike action via an app or a phone, a smartphone or an iPad or anything like that. You have to do a postal ballot, which is expensive and comes with its own problems in terms of keeping tabs on where members are and so on. But it also enshrined bans on secondary action, which is arguably a bigger blow to the working class than postal ballots, because it means that workers are not allowed to take part in action in support of colleagues in other industries, even where there's a commonality in their dispute. And the trade union leaders for the last 30 odd years have been banging the drum about all these pernicious laws. You know, the Trade Union Act, I think it was 2016, that went further. And now we've got the new one about minimum service requirements for trade unions. The fact of the matter is they will bang the drum and they will scream about every piece of pernicious legislation that comes that way. And they will ultimately do nothing because it doesn't affect them personally. It doesn't affect them because they will still be heavily remunerated. They will in all likelihood be elected for as long as they want to be elected. I'm reminded of Mark Sawalker, who's just recently retired after an incredibly long spell, over 20 years as the General Secretary of the PCS union.
25 years.
25 years. Thank you, Alex. And it's for trade union bureaucracies, trade union laws have actually acted in their benefit because it's allowed them to drive disputes that are getting to a certain point, shall we say. They've been able to drive them headlong into a ditch. You know, as we said, the CWU sold out the Royal Mail workers, the NEU sold out the teachers, and the RCN have sold out the nurses, all within the space of 8 months, 10 months. Okay? I mean, if you were a member of any of those unions and you see the TUC telling or posting a picture of Angela Eagle holding up a bloody sign saying heart unions, you'd be saying you're taking the piss, aren't you? After what they've done to the nurses, the posties, and the teachers, it's so infuriating as a trade unionist who's been a trade union member for over 30 years to see that, because there's a clear schism between what the trade union leadership are saying and the reality.
I'd like to jump in there, mate, because you're dead on. You had a season of capitulation after all the strikes, didn't you? And Labour needs the TUC. They need the unions to be strong, don't they? Yes, it's the backbone of their monetary situation. It's the backbone of the Labour Party. So this I heart unions. Now, I still believe everybody should be in a union, and you know we're all trade unionists. But this I heart union is to whitewash everything and to make everybody believe once again. Don't forget about the unions, you know, what they do good for you. And they do great things for us. But this is coming straight after the season of capitulation. So what they're saying now is, forget about all that. I heart unions.
Yeah.
Can I just add on to that? I wouldn't belittle any shop steward, and neither would Jason. I don't think anyone here would, who's trying his best to represent his members on the shop floor. Definitely. This is not what I don't think we're saying. It's the bureaucracy that once you get to a full-time position, you just forget. The machinery sucks you in, and you just forget then that you actually came from representing shop floor workers. I'm sure Dave Ward and Andy Fiore sitting in their ivory towers couldn't give a shit about a postman in Chester, you know, on the bones of his ass, who's now been told that they're backdating any sick time he had and taking money off him. Oh, but it was part of the agreement. But they're saying it wasn't. They've been shafted, and as Jason said, same as the nurses, and they won't be the last. I've got no time for these hearts, but I would say, as Rick said, you should be in a union when you're in work. It can protect you because of maybe unfair dismissal and such as that. Health and safety is a good thing to be involved with. And that, but once you get Once you start bringing in full-time officials, now you're wasting your time. And that's why it was easier in my day, because we didn't have to bring in a union official to come and say we had to do this. We just walked out the gate, and that was it. And I feel so sorry for shop stewards who are banging their heads against walls with local managers who can just sit back and say, well, there's nothing you can do about it. You can't walk out. And he's got to go back to his members and say, look, unless we go on strike and we'll be breaking the law and the union won't back us. Imagine that. You go in there, you're fighting like fuck for your members, and then you have to go back to them and say, well, we can't do anything, lads. And by the way, the union have told us they're not going to back us. Great. That's the whole root of it. The union won't back them. If they turn around and did exactly what happened years ago, and they said, we are going to back these people, and we're going to go out on strike in behalf of them, the government would shit themselves. Even though the unions aren't in a majority, people would start joining unions, I think. If they saw that they were going to do something apart from sending you, what was the last letter I got? Oh, invited to some holiday insurance for a holiday I couldn't afford in Barbados anyway. That's it. I don't want to know about stuff like that. But I would advise young people be in a union.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well,
I think
you're right.
Sorry, Alex, just to add to what Terry just said there. There's a running thread appearing through this live stream, which is get involved but understand the limitations, be it parliamentary democracy, be it trade unionism. I would say to anybody who's got a trade union available in their workplace, yes, sign up, but understand the limitations. Understand that trade unionism as a thing has got limitations to it. And I don't know how we do it, but what we need to look to get back to is the sort of trade unionism we saw at the back end of the 1960s and during the 1970s, where workers' disputes was led by workers. It wasn't led by trade union leaders. It wasn't led by trade union bureaucracies. It was led by the rank and file. It was the trade union leaders and the bureaucracies that were dragged into these disputes by their own members. Unfortunately, what we have now, and I think the servicing model that trade unions employ is partly to blame for this, but what we have is members looking up all the time to their trade union leaders, their shop stewards, their regional officers and so on to lead them in dispute. And believe me, they're the last people you need leading you in a dispute, because they'll lead your dispute straight into a ditch. So we need to get back to I think political education and class consciousness is behind it. It's a big project, but we have to try and do it. We need to create rank and file trade union members that can lead their own disputes, not rely on the bureaucracies.
Yeah, that's a good point, Jason, which is that the trade union bureaucracy in Britain, and I think the same is true in the United States, they are the co-managers of the anti-trade union laws. They manage it with the state and the employers. That's the tripartite system. But it's not a system that's operating in our interest. It's a system that operates in the interest of the state, the employers, and the trade union leaders. So basically, you need a situation where enough workers feel confident enough in their own strength in a workplace to walk out and say to the permanent bureaucrats, say, well, you either back us or you fuck off, go get out of the way. And I think that the reason, I mean, we used to get, when I was on the Manchester Trades Council, we used to get like circulars around all the time saying, oh, why is the union membership stagnating at 6 million? Why is nobody joining? Why is it that we've got all these areas like catering, like short-term contract employment in like delivery services? Why is it that all the outsourced cleaners and cooks in all these giant employers don't join unions? Because they see no value in it. When was the last time they saw a union actually fight and do something? Like I had a situation, it was quite a long time ago now, where I was having an argument with somebody I was working with about why we should join. I was working in Birmingham City Council at the time. And the guy said, well, what's the point? Because that was just after, it was one of the big car plants in Coventry. The union there, it was T&G at the time, had agreed with the employer to preserve the full-time contract staff who were a minority in that production line, and just let go guys with 1, 2, 3 years service on agency contracts and sell them out. whether they were union members or not. Because he said, the official said, my job is to protect the permanent contract staff. And from a technical point of view, in terms of his job description, he was probably right. But suddenly you had hundreds of guys who'd been paying union dues be thrown out. And a lot of people saw that and thought, well, what the fuck is the point? You know? And we ran into this same issue in the civil service union, because I was in the Mark Sawatka dictatorship for 25 years. No, I wasn't in for 25 years, but he was. And when we started trying to organize agency staff, the biggest objection came from long-serving reps. And the officials said they were in favor of it, but don't lift a finger to help you. So the first battle we actually had to overcome to try and organize agency staff was our own representatives, who viewed themselves as they were permanent staff as a superior level of existence. And like, oh, well, we're superior. These agency staff, they're here today, gone tomorrow. But that wasn't true. Because the way the British workplace has changed, what you have is a diminishing layer of staff on permanent contracts who usually started 20 to 30 years ago. And this is in the public sector. And then you've got a huge layer because they've laid off loads of people who used to do jobs on those permanent contracts, or people have retired and they've not been replaced. But the work's still there. So they've brought in people on agency contracts, fixed term contract staff. They've casualized it as far as they possibly can. So you've got like 5 different types of contracts working in one workplace. And the unions just haven't responded to that at all. They've retreated to representing the diminishing layer of people on the better contracts, and they've left all the not just younger workers, but you got people in their 50s on these contracts now as well. And they've let them twist in the wind, basically. And then they say, oh, well, why does nobody join? Because you don't represent them, because you do the easy thing, which is you stick to the pre-existing deal, which is for the permanent contract staff. You don't try and push the employer to recognize you, to bargain over the terms and conditions of the agency staff, the fixed term contract workers, the people on day rates, etc.
Yeah, you're right. You're dead right. And it hadn't changed from what you say from years ago when we used to have temporary staff and cover summer holidays. But in the end, they're having, in a factory I worked in for 20 years, Burma Castrol. And in the end, you'd get people who'd been there like 2 years who were temporary. And I was a branch secretary. And in the end, we said, well, hang on. You know, they've been here 2 years. There's obviously a need for the job. They're not just covering holidays. They're here at Christmas time. They're here in October. They're here in January. So that we need to have them made permanent. Oh, well, you know, the overheads. Well, if you don't make it permanent, you're going to have to fire them. Because we knew they couldn't. They were the days of the strength. Didn't go to the union official. And they just came and said, well, what's the ultimatum? I said, well, either you make them permanent or we're all walking out the gate. And they were permanent within a week. And they were made up. Now, a lot of them stayed there for 20, 30 years. You know, so it can work, but it's the strength from the bottom. As Jason said, that's the model that we should look for with our class consciousness, is to try and say to people, you know, that your older ones you might get, they've probably been in other companies and they've gone to a company and they're thinking, oh, I'm in my twilight years, I'm not going to rock the boat. But a young one who's got his life ahead, as I used to say to lads in the post who were in the 20s, and they'd say to me, why don't you go on the union? And I'd say, I'm nearly 50. Why would I want to do it now? You're 20 odd. It's your future. I'll only be here another 10 years. You'll be here another 40. So you best get your finger out your arse and go and start doing something for yourself. That's the way to get it into them. They need to be doing something as well. But if they're not taught by older shop stewards and the union, then they'll never know. And as Rick has said on other broadcasts we've done, on other shows, the education, the trade union is sadly lacking at the moment. Sadly.
Yeah. You're completely right, Terry. I was going to say something, but you have all summed it up. That the union needs to be fighting against the system, not just against employers. Otherwise, things are going to stay the same forever, and they're going to be shite.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of shite, Chris, I wanted to get everybody's reaction to this, which is a story in The Guardian, which I will post in the chat so everybody can see it. It's how British Gas's profits went up by 10 times in the last year, from 72 million previous financial year So 751 million in the financial year that's coming to a close in a few weeks' time. So, comrades, aren't you glad that you live in a free market system where there's no such thing as monopolies?
Yeah,
Fantastic.
it's
This is capitalism
fantastic.
in action, comrades. Yes.
Yeah. Imagine if you lived in, I don't know, the Soviet Union, where we couldn't buy brand new jeans every day.
yeah. But you can't buy
Yeah.
brand new jeans every day, but your gas prices is considerably lower. So much
Yeah.
so it's a
And
human.
also, I
Yeah.
can't buy brand new jeans every day.
No, you can't. You can get them on clear pay, and you can pay for them next to your Just Eat for £1 a week. Absolutely ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. There's so many different companies out there, and apparently, capitalism creates its own market, and they will regulate each other, but they're all just so frigging massive. The prices are ridiculous. I was on the phone to Scottish Power not too long ago, and I'm not going to go into the details of it, but I told them some choice words. But the people on the phone didn't even understand. Said, no, this is how much you've used. I said, no, that's how much you're charging me to use what should be a human necessity.
And
Go on, Chris.
especially with anything like gas or lecky, it's not like you get different flavors of it. So how can you justify charging different amounts? I understand if I go to a restaurant, maybe steak tartare might be more expensive than a prawn cocktail, but gas to heat a house, it's all the same.
Yeah.
Different hobs.
Well, no, it's still the same gas.
Same gas. They charge the poor more than they do the rich.
Well, no, of course, they used to argue that it's because the wholesale prices went up. Wholesale prices have come right down again, but the prices haven't. And even with and the government subsidy is a subsidy essentially for the gas companies. So, like the price will not go down. So this is class war in action, being waged by the ruling class and the state, who then put a gun to your head and said, "Well, you either pay up or we cut you off, and you and your family will freeze." So if that's not the most vivid definition of a class war, I don't know what is.
But the more disgusting than that, they won't cut you off if you're paying a bill, right? If you're paying a bill and you can't afford that bill, they'll say, right, we'll put in a prepayment meter. So they'll come and put a prepayment meter in where the onus is on you to go and get, the little £5 blue cards, but no, to go and get your amount put on however way you do. But it's your key in it now. It's your key. That's right. You go and put your key in the shop. When you've got no money, you've got no money to put on the key. So the onus is on you to be able to sort yourself out. With a bill, what can they do? You know what I mean? They'll put these prepayment meters in, and it's your own fault because you didn't have the money to put your own gas on. That's why you're
right. I'm actually on a prepay meter.
Yeah.
And it's been like that in my flat since I moved in. And I asked them to put me on to a normal meter, a monthly meter. Mm-hmm. But they said we can only do that if we install a smart meter. And I don't know much about them, but I was quite suspicious of smart meters. I've heard that they're quite easy to cut your supply off, and they often make mistakes. So I didn't want that. But I ended up going into emergency credit on my lecky and my gas. And the way of paying that back is different on on each of them, even though it's the same company. Paying the gas back kept putting me into more debt, whereas paying the lecky back was just clearing the debt. So I ended up paying about 90 quid for 60 quid's worth of gas last year. I'm not gonna name the company because I'm still having a dispute with them, but that did happen.
Well, I've got a shit company and it's utility, so they're all the same. We've got a smart meter, but we're a council tenant. I've been for on this house for 20 odd years, but they come and put them all in as a part of your lease. Okay, they work. If you, well, it's like everything, isn't it? If you've got money in your bank to pay it in, you'll always have gas and electric. But the time comes when you've got something else happens. Your washing machine breaks down. You've got to pay for that. You have to cut back on your gas and electric. It's the same for everybody. But Chris, you're right. That gas business is a load of crap. I'm finding out looking at the gas, and I'm going to have the heating's only been on an hour. Take the edge off, and it's gone down £4.50 on the meter. And they got solar panels on the roof. That's supposed to, we'll put these solar panels on, and I said, well, we'll be able to store the electric there and sell it back to the grid. Oh, no, you can't do that. No, you can't do that. But it's good. It's supposed to be good for your electric supply. I don't see any difference. They might as well just be not even wired up or plumbed in for me.
Yeah, the problem with that is it's because it's a private company doing it.
Of course.
There is a method of putting solar panels on a roof and connecting them to the local grid. But if someone's if your gas or electric company is putting them on for show, it doesn't work.
They are actually plumbed in, and there is but I mean, for all intents and purposes, what I'm saying, for all intents and purposes, they might as well not be, because I don't see any benefit of them.
No, but there is a way to do that, and it's just not possible under our private system. And out of all the things that can and can't be privatised or nationalised, energy should be the main one. Everybody needs it, and it's always the same. You might get different methods of bringing it to the people, but at the end of the day, in everybody's house, you're getting gas or lecky. You're getting a warm house or a cold house. You're getting hot food or cold food or uncooked food.
Well, I don't know if this is going to make anybody feel any better. It's probably not. But our Irish partisan, our correspondent who's out in Minsk, says he pays £35 a month for gas and electric, basically due to the fact that he gets cheap Russian gas coming into Belarus. And also the fact that I don't know if Belarus kept control over their gas and electricity companies, but large segments of the old planned economy survived there. So they're doing all right. It's us in the free West who are getting screwed. But, we're free. How's everybody feel?
Just for Irish partisans' information, my monthly gas and electric bill this month was £220. He's definitely selling Belarus to me.
Mine was £340. Mine was £340, so I'm on my way right now. It's cheaper to get a plane ticket, isn't it?
It's cheapest. All right. So the Class Consciousness Project is emigrating to Belarus and seeking political asylum.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we're all going to relocate. Yes.
Yeah. Right. One final point, comrades, because we're coming up to the hour now. If we can sum up our discussion, I think it's gone in several rather interesting directions. But I wanted to invite all comrades to make a closing pitch, shall we say, and perhaps advertise our various different wares that the project has available. I don't know who wants to go first with closing out.
Go on, Jace.
I will go on. Okay, so if you want to see our output, our articles, we put out articles at least a one or two a week. You can find us at classconsciousnessproject.blog. We're also on TikTok, we're on Twitter, we're on Instagram, and you can snail mail us as well if you want to. classconsciousnessproject@gmail.com. That's all our output. I'll close by saying I fully expect George Galloway to win the Rochdale by-election. But as I said earlier, I suspect it will go up like a firework and come down like a burnt stick.
Cheers, Jason.
I'd agree with that. My part and shot is, as always, it's going to be push the class consciousness to push the unions, push youth into unions, try and educate, get education going, advocating education to young people in unions. Something's got to be built up, and we can only start by building it with some existing kind of organisation. Forget these leaders and your sweetheart love deals around your shoulder. What is it called? Heart unions? No, that's a load of bollocks.
Chris?
I'd like to add as well with our accounts. Our Telegram is probably the most uncensored that you can go on. It's probably not the busiest, but the most uncensored. If you go on Facebook, you go on Instagram, there's a certain amount of things that we can put on. Our new TikTok is growing, so be patient with us, but we will have little rants coming out there. Myself, I think Jason summed it up earlier to say that you need to know the limitations of the systems that you're in. The parliamentary system is a bourgeois system and it's never going to work for us. Essentially, we need to destroy it to change the country. But if you do feel like, as Galloway does, that you need to get into it to make some changes, to have a discussion, to be seen, then you need to know what you can and can't do. Some people don't seem to. Same with the trade unions, isn't it? The trade unions will only work to a certain extent. They will never damage the company. They wouldn't tell the owners of the company to piss off and we'll take it over. They wouldn't do that. They wouldn't force nationalisation. They will make sure you get a penny increase. So it's all about advancing the workers, isn't it? You want to learn, you want to understand, and you want to know the right direction in which to go.
Chris?
Yeah, just to add to all that, if you've agreed what we're talking about tonight, it's not just about talking on the internet. Get your mates to know. Talk to them in the workplace. Talk to your mates on the streets, in the pubs, and get them all talking about what we've been talking about. Because the revolution's not going to happen on the internet.
Very true.
I think that's the perfect note on which to leave the live stream for tonight. So thank you to everybody who's tuned in and commented so far. So I think the final point I want to make is that, as Chris says, revolutions don't happen on the internet. And to answer a point that was made earlier by Irish Partisan in the chat, yeah, you can go to the parliamentary route, but I think we've drawn out in the discussion tonight the only effective way of doing that is firstly to have the base in the communities and the workplaces already, so that you're going in there, and not only does that empower you, but it also keeps you honest, because there's an awful lot of people who've gone into Parliament mainly for the Labour Party with perhaps honest intentions, who ended up basically as a servant of the bourgeoisie. Just look at the amount of trade unionists in the House of Lords, that real union barons, including one up the road from me, Baron John Monks of Blakely, as an area of Manchester. And the other point is that if you need to bear in mind what Lenin said about parliamentarism. You're there to make a point. You're there to demonstrate to the working class that it's a farce. And you're there to use the platform that it gives you to make that point over and over again, to point out that no real decisions get made here. They're all made behind closed doors in the permanent bureaucracy, in the Bank of England and other areas that genuinely hold power in this country. It's not the bunch of clowns in Parliament, you know? So I think it's a good place to leave it. Again, thanks to everybody who's tuned in for tonight. Be sure to like and share the stream. It'll be up, of course, on our YouTube page. And check out all the different social media channels that other comrades I've mentioned. But from us at the Class Consciousness Project, we draw it to a close for tonight and say good night and solidarity.
Bye all.
Good night.